Well, today, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt is set to launch major reforms to the United Kingdom's financial services sector, with plans to rip up red tape and replace many EU regulations. Branded as the Edinburgh reforms, they'll be announced in the Scottish capital, the second largest financial centre in the United Kingdom. In truth, these are a rebranded version of what the Truss administration was describing as the Big Bang 2.0. So might Rishi Sunak be more radical than we expected after all? Elsewhere this week, the MP Julian Knight has accused the Tory party of denying his right to a fair hearing after being suspended over sexual assault allegations. Along with the suspension of the MP Conor McGinn from the Labour Party, this now takes the total number of independent MPs to 15, a larger group than the Liberal Democrats. Well, let's discuss these stories now with the former government speechwriter and advisor to Prime Minister Liz Truss, Asa Bennett. And Asa,
good morning.
First of all, listening to what we're expecting Jeremy Hunt to be saying in Edinburgh later today, have we been perhaps too harsh upon Rishi Sunak over the last few weeks? Is he not this sort of carefully, slowly sort of figure that he's been painted as? Does he actually have a bit of reforming zeal, a bit of a Trussian quality, perhaps?
Well, look, they're both colleagues, and it's great to see that Rishi is unleashing his inner radical, as we see that he's carrying on the work that Liz was championing in government of seizing our post-Brexit freedoms and making sure the city can be at its most competitive and at its best. And if I just pick one of the reforms, for example, this thing called Solvency II, the capital requirements, fantastically technical, I know, but I'm merely just going to say this. It's things that the insurers were saying were stopping them investing tens of billions of pounds in British infrastructure. And that's just what we need to get Britain building, growing and, getting the growth we really want to see in the economy.
It's interesting, though, looking at the whole sort of supply-side reform agenda that the Truss administration really was wanting to get to. Of course, we never got to the announcement of so many of these individual pieces of supply-side reform that the Truss administration was planning. Is it your view that perhaps the Hunt Chancellery or indeed the Sunak administration might be picking up some of these bits that were being worked on for so long behind the scenes under the last administration?
Yes, I'd like to think that Rishi is picking up where Liz left off, in that they both would be united in agreeing that there needs to be growth, and obviously we've seen that Rishi had to come in to stabilise the markets, reassure people that there was that long-term plan in place, and then as a result, there are things that have been ditched from the Truss administration, like investment zones. But then Michael Gove's made clear he's effectively rebranding them and pursuing by different means the same sort of ends. And as we see that, when you're coming out of the sort of pandemic and the after effects of Putin's war, you do need to make sure there's jobs being created, that there are the industries of the future there. And this is the sort of stuff we're seeing today that will ensure that the city can be right there at the cutting edge.
And yet there is, of course, the element of corporation tax rising when most other countries, most of our competitors are looking at reducing their tax burdens. Our tax burden has risen to the highest it has ever been. Similarly, you mentioned things like investment zones, perhaps planning liberalisation that was expected under Liz Truss. These things have been ditched. That's going to knock growth.
Of course, the government has made clear they see this as anti-growth. It's a challenge for growth that will constrain it. So they've been clear in those terms. But of course, I think the logic in their view for the Sunak administration is that if they tighten the belts now, then they can go for gold in the years to come, as it were.